Yo, what is good? This is SelzSpeaks podcast. You already know how it is. It's all about bringing the people in and bringing impact and bringing love and joy and knowledge and experience, most of all, and keeping it real. And so I have a fun guest to bring on. So if you guys remember on my Instagram, I was doing challenges and I was saying things like, yo, what should I do for the year? And this wonderful person has said, yo, do a podcast on 12 tough topics. She don't even realize this, but this was one of the signs that I was praying for to actually get back on the podcast heavy. And she was one of
Wow.
those confirmations. So her making a challenge, she gets to be one of the first people to be on my first tough 12 topics that she challenged me for this year. So I would love to introduce to you all Mitsuka Attys Noël. How you doing, love? Tell the people a little bit about yourself. Talk to us.
I'm great. So, yes, my name's Mitsuka. I recently turned 27, which feels super, super old. I'm also newly married, which obviously is what we're going to be talking about today. And that was a huge life transition. Aside from that, just more on the professional side, I'm a law graduate, so I'm a Juris Doctor who, does a lot of things outside of like the traditional professional space. So I'm also a vocalist, a content creator, all of those things. So I'm just a person who loves feeding my creative side, and one of the most important things to me is like my family. So
That's what's
that's
up.
just
The
like a
list, the list goes
little bit.
on and on.
Yeah.
So tell us, what's getting married like? You just got married. Tell us a little bit about your husband. What it feels like to be married. Talk to us.
Yeah, like every person that asks me that question since I get married, I always feel like I'm in a weird space. Like what do you answer? Because everybody's kind of like looking out for you to like say like this, like everything is amazing. Like
Right,
this is
right.
exactly what I've always wanted. And the answer that I always give is it's a transition, because that's
Mm-hmm.
the most honest answer I could give. I always say, well, it's a transition.
That's right.
There's
That's
obviously
right.
going back into it, but overall it's a transition. And
Mm-hmm.
as with any transition, there are beautiful parts of it. There are parts of it that you're so excited about, but there are like some parts of it that you're really uncertain about how they will go. So it just leaves you feeling sort of unsure about the
Right,
space.
right, right, right.
My husband, he is 30 years old. He just entered the 30 club.
Nice,
He's
nice. Congrats.
yeah, he's a physician assistant, so he works in the medical field and
Mm-hmm.
also a respiratory therapist. He's also an elder at his church, so he gets involved
Oh,
in a lot
nice.
of church initiatives, and I think that's something that we bonded over as well because we both have our own personal ministries.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's just a little bit about him.
That's what's up. That's what's up. And so now, what would you say that all the things that you heard prior to marriage prepared you for marriage, or you feel like you wish people told you more?
I wish people were definitely more honest.
Mm-hmm.
What I realized is you wake up one day and then you get proposed to, you're engaged, and it seems like you enter like a world. Like everybody made it seem like marriage was this blissful thing and there's no issues.
Right.
And the moment you get engaged, they start telling you a little bit more, and you're left questioning like, what I was dating. Why couldn't you tell me I got engaged? Like why are you saying this? But I realized specifically with women, married women, they often don't feel comfortable to speak about marriage life with people who are unmarried and with people
Mm,
who aren't engaged. So
right.
they give you a little bit when you're engaged, and then they give you a little bit more when you're married. But at that
Mm-hmm.
point, they're completely real with you when you're
Right.
married, already in the marriage. So
Right.
I don't think I was fully prepared. I don't think my family and my parents prepared me for marriage.
Mm-hmm.
They basically told me what my role would be and the obligation that I have as a
Right.
wife.
Right. Right.
Only person that I would say that was a bit more honest with me was my mentor, who, after I got engaged, I told myself I needed to find a married mentor who could
Mm-hmm.
kind of like set me up for this space that I was about to enter into in my life. And with her, she gave me the real deal. Like from the very beginning, she told me, listen, marriage is not about making you happy, it's about
Mm.
making you more holy.
That's
And
right.
literally, it's something that literally wrecked every single idea that I had about marriage because it made it more scary for me.
Yeah.
And also, theoretically speaking, you hear it and you're just like, oh yeah, marriage makes you, it's not made to make you happy, it's made to make you more holy. You don't really see, you don't understand what that means.
That's right.
You just don't. Yeah.
So like one thing I always say, and I always say like one thing I wish I knew or someone told me before I got married was as a man that the most important thing a man could do is know or learn how to lead women. Because I feel
Yes.
like as a man, we're so used to leading other men and we try the
Yeah.
same approach when we get married and it does not work at all. And it's
Yeah.
like leading women is a very different experience. And I feel like it's one of the most, if not the most important thing to find a certain level of success in your marriage. Cause it's like, men, we're ambitious. We want to accomplish this. We want to do that. Like, even me when I got married, I'm about to hit 5 years. So some people might say I'm young in the game, but it's like,
Oh no, to me you're old because I'm like I'm almost 1 year in, not even a full year yet. Yeah.
so it's like when I came into it, I'm thinking, all right, in 2 years we're gonna be at this point, and then by like year 4 or 5, we're gonna be cruising. And it's year
Mhm.
4 or 5, and I'm like, man, what I thought at 2 years ain't even close. And it's like the
Yeah, yeah,
conversations that I've
yeah,
had with other married people. I remember I had a family friend of ours, and her and her husband have been married like 15 plus years. And she
yeah.
told me, listen, the timetable for marriage is far greater than you think. She was like,
Mhm.
her and her husband, and I'm really explaining the statement. She said her and her husband didn't find their sexual groove until 10 years into it. And meaning, like, it wasn't mean they weren't doing their thing, but it
Mhm.
means like when everything was just flowing, you understand her, she understands you. And before I got married, I'm thinking things like that. Oh, conversation
It's
here,
gonna be
conversation.
easy. Y'all
Yeah,
gonna
we
be popping
good.
off.
Or
Yeah.
like the communication aspect, we gonna figure it out. In 2 years, we gonna be cruising. And I'm like, yo, this is not like, I was saying on my other joint, how me and my wife, like,
Mhm.
in our time of marriage, there are things that, like, okay, we've made leaps and bounds, and then there are things that I thought we'd be much further moving forward on, that we're not even there yet. And then,
Yeah.
what I mean, you don't have kids yet, and I'm gonna tell you, like I tell everybody I tell you Russia have 'em, I say take your
Take my time. Yeah. Listen, nobody tells me that. Everybody has been saying, do it now because you never know what might happen. So just try and
take
get it in as
your
soon as
time.
possible.
Listen, or you better yet, do it on the Lord's time. That's what I will say. Cause I
Right.
think you said you 27, he just got 30. So I was kind of around that age when I had children. It just
Mhm.
changes the dynamic so much more because you already see, how it is growing with another person. And then when you throw a
Mhm.
tiny person in there that has to really take all your attention a lot of the time, it just changes the whole dynamic. So
Yeah, I
I
can
would just
imagine.
say God's timing because he knows best.
Right.
But
Agreed.
you,
Agreed.
so if I were to say to men, I wish that someone taught me how to lead women, what would you say as a woman is something you really wish you knew or you were told now being married for almost a year?
I think I would tell women that you need to learn how to adapt. Like the skill of adaptation is something that you really need to master. Um, because the person that you marry is not the person like you end up in a marriage with, which seems very weird to say, but the person you marry is really not the person you end up in a marriage with. Like there's things that show up that you would not have expected. You couldn't have prepared for it. Like nobody would be able to prepare for it. So you have to be able to have the skill to be able to adapt in a healthy way, just so that you're able to make it through. Like for me personally, one of the biggest transitions for me in marriage was the fact that I've never lived with a man before.
Right,
So now
right.
that like not even thinking about marriage, just living with a man,
Mm-hmm.
it
Mm-hmm.
drove me nuts. Men and women just live differently. You know
That's
what I mean?
right. That's right.
Habits. And for me, I would always look at it like, I can't even, how did I not see this? But there's no way I would have been able to
That's
see it
right.
because
That's right. That's right.
I had never lived with a man before.
You
So I
know,
would say to learn the skill of adaptation because it's going to be something that is required in marriage for sure.
so I always see that when it comes to women, especially young women in church, you guys are always told never compromise, don't compromise your standards, don't compromise this, don't compromise that. And then as soon as you get married, is all right, now compromise like crazy.
Yes.
Is that
Yeah.
like really just jolting and confusing for you?
It's very jolting because, at least for me, and I see this messaging, being given out to young women too. We come in and, they say that if a man wants, you're the prize, you're the one that he seeks after, and you almost like become like the trophy that he gets
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
end of, um, this whole period of pursuing you. And I don't want to say we feel entitled, but maybe that's the
Right.
word. Like we sort of feel entitled to being treated a certain way, but we don't think about how we're going to adapt
Mm-hmm.
to treat this other person.
Right, right, right.
We hear all this stuff like in secular music saying, "Oh, I'm going to cater to my man," all this different stuff, but to a point, it's pretty surface level because we haven't really been taught how to do so because I think from dating and even in engagement and
Mm-hmm.
marriage and even having a wedding, everything is really revolves around the woman. So we
Right.
expect to continue in marriage, but marriage doesn't usually revolve around us. So
Ooh.
yeah.
Wait, hold. I'm gonna say so. You got some guts because a lot of women who are not married will have the very exact opposite perspective that you have. But you, who's actually in the game, who actually understands it, have said
Yeah.
something that's actually pretty countercultural. I want you to kind of like give us a little bit more for that,
Yeah,
especially.
and I mean, it's something that I've had to learn. And listen, I haven't mastered it. It's something that I'm still learning because to a certain extent, I still feel like I have that mindset where it's like my husband needs to cater to me. Like, if I'm
Mm-hmm.
not happy, we hear happy wife, happy life. If I'm not happy, then nothing works in this
Right,
marriage.
right, right.
So I feel like, again, culture doesn't prepare us for catering to man. They don't prepare us for being able to know, you have these wants and you have these desires, and I want to cater to them. But instead, culture tells us you need to have your needs catered to first before I
Mm-hmm.
even try to please you back. And that's the
Right.
mindset that I have. And I think that up until maybe a few months ago, I had that mindset. It was
Mm-hmm.
just like, yeah, I know you want me to cater to you in this way, but if you're not catering to me in this way, don't expect me to
Right.
cater to you in that
Right.
way, which
Right.
is not even a godly way of looking at things.
Mm-hmm.
Because, we are told that we have to, the person that serves the best is the one that, they're the one that loves the best as
That's
well.
right.
And
That's right.
again, we're cultural. So for me, I always believed that if I had to serve my husband, he had to serve me first.
Right.
It wasn't, I wasn't going to take the first step.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm breaking out of that. And it's very difficult and it's very uncomfortable.
Right.
And it's very frustrating to to feel it while you're doing it because it's something that you don't want to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, you don't want to do it. It's the thing that needs to be done the most. So, yeah.
So giving you the flip side, right? So
Yeah.
like going into marriage, all the pressure is placed on the guy as far as you got to provide, you got to this. So it's like we
Mhm.
are usually the leaders of everything. When it comes to intimacy, we got to be the initiators, and when it's, all that stuff. And it's sometimes as a guy, it's like, when is that moment where I don't have to do this just to get that? Can I just be loved with just without me having to do anything? And it's very interesting because in a sense, when I went into it, I had this mindset of like, yo, I'm doing all this stuff and I'm not getting the things that I want. I'm not getting the response that I want. And I started to fall into it's like when you first got into it, you were doing all these things out of love. You know,
Yeah.
I fill up your gas tank. I, make sure whatever you need is there. I'm doing all these things out of love. But then when I feel like I'm not reciprocating, all of a sudden the things that I started as love become the list of things that I'm doing that you're not matching. And
Yeah.
so on the flip side, God checked me and was like, listen, first of all, if you're going to try to compare your list to hers, first try to compare my list to yours. And so when
Mm,
God put me in that position, I was like, all right, you do wait for me, I can never, whatever. So then I
right.
had to humble myself and understand like it really comes down to, am I willing to consistently love this person unconditionally? And what people don't understand about unconditional love is,
Conditionally the key.
and
It
what
really
people don't understand is, and unconditional love doesn't mean unconditional tolerance. Doesn't mean you
Yeah.
tolerate this person treating you or beating up on you. That's not what we're saying. But what it
Mhm.
does mean is it means I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna love you, and it's not contingent on you responding the exact way I want to respond. And
Mhm.
and trust me, it's a challenge. Even after 5 years,
Huge
even
challenge.
knowing that I'm supposed to do it, I'm better at it than I was. But there be those days where it's like, listen, girl, I
You don't
done
even
done.
feel like it.
That's it.
You
That's
don't
it.
even feel
It's
like
like
it.
you
You
just look at
don't feel
her
like
like, I don't even feel like being married today. I just want to go
yeah.
sleep. I wake up, maybe I feel, whatever. But
Yeah,
you know
and
what I
it's
mean?
real, and there's not really a space to express that sometimes, you know?
Right. And the thing that becomes frustrating is that like there is no platform or open space where people are actually talking about the reality of this. It's either
Yeah,
you're bashing relationships or you're over glamorizing it, but there's no healthy middle. And I feel like there's no place where people are saying the reality of it. You know what I mean? And so
mhm,
on that same wave, like I know, and we was kind of talking about this behind the camera, as a young lady, getting married, you had a certain lifestyle, you had a certain
yeah,
circle, and then all of a sudden now you get married. This person is the number one person that's taking your full attention of your time. But all of a sudden, all these outside people, your whole situation changes. Like, what was that like?
it for me, it was very difficult because I don't handle transition well, and I know that about myself. And because I know that about myself, that's also the reason why I chose to have a longer engagement period than people normally have. And I remember before we got engaged, I told my boyfriend at the time and now my husband, I was just like, yeah, that whole getting married in under a year thing or getting married within a year, if I do that, I think I might go crazy. Like, I literally
Right,
think
right.
I might lose my mind in marriage because I need to ease into it. And I thought that, if I took my time getting into marriage and, took like this almost 2-year transition, we were engaged for 21 months. So almost 2 years before we got married, I thought that it would just make the process just feel smoother. No, it didn't because
Mm.
it's literally one day you're married, I mean, one day you're not married, and one day you are married, and everything changes. At least that's how it felt like for me. Everything changed. No matter how much I tried to prepare myself for it, try to ease myself into it, it didn't work.
Yeah, yeah.
It's literally such a huge life change, it didn't work. And for me, I was telling you this, I think that there's a grieving process that nobody wants to speak about when you get married. Like, you have to grieve a lot. You have to grieve, the friends that you maybe aren't as close with anymore. Whether it's because they aren't able to adapt to the fact that you're married now, or for me, what I realized, the biggest transition of what I had to grieve is sort of like the intimacy in the relationship with some of my friendships. Why? Because before you probably could have been able to speak about intimate stuff, about your personal life if it's somebody that you trust. But now it seems like your story is so intertwined with your husband's life. Like, your life is so intertwined with your husband's life that it's very difficult to just speak about your genuine experience, just about life, how you would talk with your girls without it involving your
Right.
husband somehow. Trying to find balance is very, very difficult, and I still don't think I've found it. I'm pretty sure some people that, have been in the game longer than I have, they know how to, be even-handed in how they do it, but for me, that was one of the biggest things because the my community and my connections are really important to me, and that's why I select the people who are in my circle, and so knowing that there's a level of intimacy that I really couldn't have with them anymore, it left me feeling down, and I feel like I even went through, like, a period of depression where it's like, and I'm married and I'm going through, like, all these different things. I can't talk to nobody.
Right,
Um,
right.
Grace was my mentor who I trust, like, with my life, and she's married too. So I was able to speak to her because she's like 10 years older than me, married for like 7, 8 years now, and that was what helped, but it was not easy at all. So that's from a social standpoint. But there's also the part of like, you like in society, they know that you get married, you get this new name added to you, and at some point you feel like you don't know yourself. In the beginning stages, trust me, I was trying to embrace it. I was like, yeah, everywhere I was going, I was like, Mrs. Noel, Mrs. Noel,
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, yeah.
You get into that because there's sort of a pressure where you feel like you have to like go out there and make it seem
The
glamorous.
rebranding of yup.
Yeah,
Mhm.
rebranding of who you are, but
Mhm.
deep down inside, I was just like, whoa,
Mm.
all of this changes so fast. People are referring to you by your husband's last name. You're just
Yeah.
like, "Who's that?"
Mhm.
I don't know who that is.
Right.
Um,
What
and
not to cut you off, but, like, was it weird when they be like, "Mrs. Noel or Sir Noel," and you had to take a second like, "Oh, wait, that's me."
well, yeah, yeah, yeah. When they said Sir Noel, I was just like, that's my husband's mom. What do you mean? The Mrs. Noel, I feel like I kind of got ahead of it. I
Yeah.
I started saying it before anybody else was
Okay,
saying it,
okay,
just
okay.
so I wouldn't really feel too shocked when it was
Mhm.
done to me. But deep down inside, I was still like, "Who's that?" Like, I
Right.
don't even know who that is.
Right, right, right.
Yeah,
It's so different for women because women, in a sense, are like we're saying rebranding and becoming this new person, where
yeah,
guys are more like okay, now I got somebody protecting my tribe.
yeah,
For guys, we have this sense of like ownership, like, oh, that's my shorty. I gotta take care of her. All right, she under me. I'm
yeah,
standing on my S on my chest. But then for other women, and I know you were very accomplished before you got married, so your
yeah.
name itself and what you was doing already was a strong name. So now when you
Yes.
get into a relationship, you get married, it's like, oh wait, like I had a lot going on as this person. Like, I'm still that person, but I'm kind of not. Like
Yeah,
the for guys, it's a more sense of like, okay, protection. I gotta provide the pressure of making sure this person is good.
yeah.
Before a wife, like, what would you say the pressure became came for you? Because I know we're talking about the dropping the friends and the rebranding. So is the pressure really like, okay, I'm becoming a new person, and how do I sit in this role? Like, what is that for you?
I think for me, the pressure is like, how do I rebrand and become this new person? Like, because I'm a wife now, there's certain friendships and certain relationships probably can't maintain,
Mhm.
same level because I'm a wife now, like I said, my story is so intertwined with my husband that, it's you have to figure out what's a mature way to speak about certain
Mhm,
things.
mhm, mhm.
I also think that for me, I didn't know who I was anymore, and there was a huge pressure to sort of like maintain like the same lifestyle you were living
Right.
before, even in regular things like doing your hair the way you used to do it, dressing a certain way, and all these different things, which you think like in marriage is going to be the exact same way, and
Yeah.
there are some shifts a little bit um, because you feel like there's this pressure that anything you do now, it it reflects on your husband.
Right.
So you become like like a bit guarded. At least for me, I became a bit more guarded, even in the way that I dress, even the way that I spoke, because I'm just like my decisions are. I feel like they're no longer. I'm no longer responsible for them. They're gonna,
Right. It's
they're
not just you that's affected.
yeah, they're gonna charge it to my husband, and that was a very weird place for me to be in because I had to figure out, okay, well, I'm doing this. I know my husband's okay with it, but from the outside looking in, they're gonna see it as though it's like I'm not honoring him
Right,
when
right.
because they don't know the behind the scenes, they won't be able to tell whether he does or whether he doesn't.
Right, right.
Yeah, and I also think for me, social media was a huge pressure.
Mm.
Huge pressure because, after, we have, like, this wedding, this glamorous wedding, and, we're posting about it, it's like now, okay, what how does life
Right.
how do you move on now? Like, what happens afterwards? And people are, like, a bit tuned in, like, "Okay, I wanna see,"
Right.
this was before she got married, and now they got married, they had this wedding, now let's see who she turns into.
Right, right.
And I wanted to hold on to so much of who I was before, and kinda, like, put my foot down and say, "I'm not changing, like, nothing has
Mhm,
changed."
mhm.
But it just wasn't the truth, and just trying to reconcile those 2 things has just been very difficult.
Right, right.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Like I even had cousins that I was cool with until I really started to, kind of change my life. And in the sense of like, for everybody who followed me, at 23, I became celibate, was single for 5 years, waiting on guy, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So I kind of started it, but like when I got married, it was like, okay, there's group chats where, yo, you seen this chick rapper, and then it's this and that. I'm like, oh no, I gotta get out of this group chat because you know what I mean? Like I'm trying to keep myself, smooth and steady, no issues, no troubles. And it's like you find
Mhm.
yourself removing yourself from a lot of things, not it's like there's that side of you that wants to be down, and it's like, nah, I'm not switching up. But then there's a side of you like, no, you are. Like, you need to, because if I continue to entertain it, it's gonna cause issues long term. So you start hanging
Mhm.
out with different people, the more mature folk. And
Yeah.
there's something that you said that I actually really want to commend you on, because going into marriage, everybody was kept saying things like, oh, keep everything between you and your wife, only talk to you and your wife about your mental issue, your issues or whatever. And I actually felt like that was very problematic, because when me
Very.
and my when me and my wife have an issue, I ain't trying to talk to her about the issue. That's why we
At
have the issue,
all.
because I probably tried to talk to her and it didn't
Yep.
work. And what
Yeah.
was my saving grace was like, in the same way that you have a mentor, I have my cousin who's also like a spiritual covering, I guess you could say, over me. And he's
Yeah.
married, been married in the game, and he's one of the, when I think of the high score Christians and really close relationship with God, like he's there. And I, man,
Yeah.
like as a guy, I can only speak from the male perspective, but like there's those moments
Mhm.
where like you have your thoughts, then you have your dark thoughts. And
Yeah.
sometimes you
And you
have
need
like
to release
those,
it somewhere.
yes, you have those heavy, like, I have to say something crazy, but I don't know who I can say it to. And he would be
Yeah.
that for me, where I could be like, bro, this is how I feel, and da da da. And I always keep it a buck. Like there were moments where I was like, okay, I really think I made a mistake. I don't know if I should have married this person. Like
I've
I
been
know
there.
God this, and da 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 da, but like I just don't see it. And he would be like, he would be like, "Bro, like, it's okay. Take a second, da da da." He would give me wise counsel and would bring me back. And it was like having that was something that always kept me like, yo, even in my first 3 months of marriage, because it was, and my thing, I wasn't like everybody else who, well, at least
Yeah.
guys who like lived on their own. Me, I was
Mhm.
playing it the economic route. So even up until 27, 28, I was still in my
Yeah.
parents' crib. They wasn't bothering me. I wasn't bothering them. I was saving crazy money. So I literally
Yep.
went from being in my parents' crib to being married with a woman. And
Yep.
like you say, for a woman, it was a thing switched for you. Same for me. But then the other aspect of it was, I think the uniqueness of my situation was that when we got married, her dad was dealing with health issues and she was going through a lot. And then 4 months later, we had she was pregnant with my son. It was just so much. So now she's
Mhm.
dealing with a lot emotionally. I'm in this completely new situation. I'm already doing all I can. And it was just like this whole new experience where you're connected to a
Yeah.
person who's not really moving the way they used to. And it's I love the thing that you said where the person that you have the wedding with is not the person that you're in the marriage with. And I
No.
tell people, because I see people all the time before they get married, they're like, I want a person who's this, who prays, who works out, who does this, and who does that. And
Yeah.
I'm like, listen, your list is nice, but it means
Mhm.
nothing. Because
Yeah.
when you
And even if
get
that's the person you married, okay, let's say that the day after they're married, like they're not committed to working out anymore. Like everything on your list is like opposite. So you're just gonna get a divorce?
things happen, and that's why I be telling people things happen. Me
Yeah.
personally, I never try to be over religious or over churchy, but I'd be like, listen, man did not come up with marriage. That's not a man-made idea. If it was up to men, we'd be everywhere wilding. We do it. It's a
That's true.
God-made thing with a God-made recipe. So it has a specific way to do it. And I find that
Yeah.
when you follow that recipe that God gave, you'll be you'll be all right. Now you
Mhm.
mentioned something about grieving. I don't want to use the term dumb it down, but I want you to really make it plain. Like when you say
Mhm.
grieving, and I also wanted to throw this in there too. And you don't need to remember the questions. I'll remember them just in case.
Okay.
But
Okay.
let's start with this one. As you got married or as you continue to build more experience in your marriage, did you
Mhm.
feel like you were in a place where you felt like you had to choose between them or my husband, my life or my husband? Like, was that going on for you?
For
And do you still
sure.
kind of feel like that?
I still kind of feel like that for sure. One of the biggest thing that even happened was I was the youth director of my church
Mm-hmm.
when I became married, and I had been youth director for 2 years prior, and I didn't want to take the position again because I had been youth director through COVID, all this different stuff. It was difficult for me, and I had already known. I was just like, nah, marriage is this huge thing. I don't think I should take the position again. But I went and took it again. And I had spoken to my pastor about it, who was also he did our premarital counseling, and we talked about the difficulties that would create, but he also said, at any point, if you're married, like once you get married, if you need to transition out of the role, like we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Right.
But when it came to the point where I was still youth director and it started creating a conflict in my marriage, like my husband, he was an elder at his church.
Mm-hmm.
I was, involved in my church, and
Oh, you
praise
guys were in split
yeah,
churches. Mm-hmm.
separate churches. So it's like us trying to join our lives together, where we had a conversation prior that I wasn't going to go to his church
Yeah.
after we got married because I didn't think I could really spiritually grow there.
Yeah. Yeah.
We said that we were going to go to a whole new church, and that's what we said. But having it be done, like in
Yep.
practice,
Mm-hmm.
just it just was so difficult because it felt like we had these people that were each pulling us to the side. You have a loyalty to this church. You grew up in this church.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How dare you almost like
Mm-hmm.
just walk out? And even like I had some family members saying like, no, you can't. What do you mean you're leaving? Like I
Right.
had to really hide that decision from them until like the very last minute. And when
Yeah.
I told them, they were shocked. So I felt like I had to choose between my marriage and this church position that I had because it was not benefiting my marriage.
Right.
We were arguing a lot about, what church would we go to on each
Mm-hmm.
Sabbath.
Mm-hmm.
My husband didn't really feel comfortable coming to my church every single Sabbath. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't feel like going to his
Yeah.
church every single
Yeah.
Sabbath, but we
Yeah.
still had
Yeah.
these roles.
Yeah.
And it was creating so much conflict that I literally sat down with two of my staff members and also my pastor. I was just like, I'm going to have to leave.
Mm.
And people couldn't understand that. And I
Yeah.
had to say, I have to make this decision for my marriage because my marriage comes first.
That's right.
And nobody could get it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was isolating. I knew that I had to choose between, this Mitsuka who was operating in this role before I got married, and
Mm-hmm.
now that I'm married, there's other priorities. Like if it's creating a conflict in my marriage, I have to cut it out
Right.
because my marriage comes first. But it was a huge issue because nobody could understand it. So it was isolating and grieving that. I feel like I'm still grieving that.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
you're grieving like this place that you were born, like you were born and
Yeah.
raised in this church, and you
Yeah.
have like a family there, and you're grieving it because you know that like there's there's uncertainty on the other side of the
Yep.
decision that you're making. Although
Yep.
it's a good one and it's a holy one and it's a God ordained one,
Mm-hmm.
there's so much uncertainty on the other side that you would rather just sit in a place where you are comfortable, but
Yeah. Yeah.
then it just can't be done.
Listening to what you're saying, it's like before the marriage, when we think about the wedding, we're thinking about all these things that we're getting: the dress, the flowers. I'm getting this. I'm gonna look this way, and da 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 da. And then it's like once you get into marriage, you start to realize I'm giving up so much.
You're losing a lot, and
Or
I feel like it's also a trademark of marriage. There's this podcast that I love listening to, The Basement by Tim Ross,
oh
and
yeah, I
he was
love him.
like
Dope.
literally like yeah, he was like, "Marriage is an altar." Like,
That's it. That's it.
to an altar, like, empty-handed, you giving something up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I had never seen somebody phrase it that way, and when I heard it, it's like something clicked in my mind. I was just like, "Yes, this is exactly how it feels." Like, I feel like I'm sacrificing so much, and it feels like I'm literally putting myself on the altar, like,
That's
I'm
right.
dying.
That's right.
Doesn't feel good.
I say this like in my own experience, like I love to salsa, I love to dance. However, when I got married, I had to really take a second and think about this because I was like, okay, while my wife would like to learn, I don't, she's not in the headspace to be, doing that right now. And I was like, do I really want to get into the habit of on a Saturday night or whatever night, I'm gonna go out, dance for a couple hours from what 8 to 12. I'm not with my wife. I'm around a bunch of gorgeous other women. Do I
Yeah.
really want to do that? And so a lot of people who are in that community who know me well be like, yo, man, we haven't seen you in a minute dancing. And I'm like, no, look, I just can't be there right now. And some people come to me like, yo, get back to the dancing. And it's like it's something that you say when you said like they don't understand that there are certain things that you have to put your marriage first and before. And I think people who are not married always feel like you're giving, and you're losing yourself. But it's really not that because there is a beauty of marriage. And I was talking about that prior in my other podcast, the partnership, the building with the person. And it's like when you're building and you're creating something, there are concessions that you have to make in certain seasons. It doesn't
Yeah,
mean it won't mean it doesn't mean you'll never do things. It just means right now,
we
maybe
can't.
this section of our marriage or this subject is a fragile one. Maybe
Yeah,
another aspect of it, oh, we're super strong there. We don't have no worries. But this right here, we're a little weak. So I need to kind of pull back a little bit, strengthen it, and put it where it needs to go. And then we can kind of fall in line. And
yeah,
and it's like, you know, when we talk about, the choosing, I think, people who just it's because marriage just gets such a bad rap a lot. It's just like you look into it like and then again, like you say, it's an altar. So when a person looks from the outside and they're like, you see, marriage, you're just giving up something, you lose yourself, you lose your community, you lose
mhm.
this. And it's like, no. It's like if you and I just love the analogy of losing weight because I feel like that's just a great thing for life. Like it's just so simple. So going back
Yeah,
to the losing weight, right? When you want to lose weight, you have to do the right things consistently, which is work
mhm,
out and stuff, but you also have to abstain from certain things and remove certain things from your palate and from the things
yeah,
that you're eating. It's the same thing with marriage. If you want to keep doing whatever you want to do, that's
mhm,
fine, but there's gonna be consequences for it. It's
of
like
course.
I could easily, every pretty girl I see be in their DMs. If I see somebody I could flirt, I have the full. It's my right as a human being to do whatever I
Yeah,
want.
you have the agency to do so, yeah.
That's it. However, when Genevieve Jean-Pierre finds out what I'm doing, if you guys see me in a casket, that's the consequences of what I did. It just is what it is.
Yeah,
However, though, the joy that I get when my marriage is benefiting from these sacrifices and these decisions, I think it 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 overcomes everything. So I'll say this. Okay, we talk about the difficulty of
mm,
leaving the church that you grew up in, and I completely understand that situation because my wife was literally in the church that her father and her entire family were in. And in
wow,
their
yeah.
mind, they had it that like when she would leave, when she got married, I was gonna come to the church
You're
and play
coming
for them.
over.
And I was like, I love y'all. I don't love y'all that much. Like, nah. And so literally, like the way we did it though, I was about to be like,
Mhm,
all right, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. But as I was going, God was like, hey, 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 I got this. If you try to, you're gonna just create a whole bunch of mess that you don't need to create. Just fall back.
okay,
So when we kind of talked about it, I said, listen, pray about it. You go with
mhm.
whatever decision the Lord wants you to go with. In my mind, I was like, girl, you better be with me every Saturday.
Right.
But I had to just keep it aside and just be like, you know what? You deal with it. And God came through and she said, you know what? I've been praying about it, and I feel like I should be with you on the weekends. And my situation is unique in the sense that like I'm not at the same church every weekend. I'm always different places
Mm,
sometimes. And it bothers me because now when you want to have kids, you want them to necessarily be somewhere stable. But
Yeah.
it's like even through that, we've kind of just found ways that continue to make sense for us because it was
Mhm.
never like a dogmatic approach. So we talked about the difficulty of leaving your environment for the benefit of your marriage.
Mhm.
What was the benefit?
The benefit. I think that it allowed us to unify in ways that we wouldn't have on the flip side.
Mhm.
Not only were we leaving our churches, we also moved to like a new state. Granted, like we're in New Jersey now, we don't live that far from New York,
Right,
but
right.
we moved to a new state. And I think about if we had stayed in New York, there would have been so much family involvement. Not in like not even like in a bad way, like, they were trying to break you up or anything like that. There would have just been so many voices that
Mhm.
and able to sort of like lock in with each other and just make certain decisions that we needed to make for us. And I think that the benefit of, being able to leave each of those churches is now we can start fresh. Like we can truly decide how we want to move forward. And the church that we did eventually choose to go to now, which the rule was that, or the idea was that we start going there this year in
Yeah.
2023. We went there last Sabbath, and I feel like we got so much confirmation of
Wow.
why we needed to be there. Not only in what we can give to the church, but also how the church can like give us something that we hadn't had before.
Right.
Um, in the church that I was in before, and also in my husband's church, there were not many married couples our age that that we could sort of like lean on, and that could sharpen us in a lot of ways. In this new church that we're going to, there's so many young married couples who are in the
Mm.
same season that we're in, and I can already see how we'll be able to be sharpened by them. Where if we had stayed in these other churches, like
Mhm.
it just wouldn't have worked. I also can see how we can spiritually grow independently of our families.
Mm.
A lot of the times you grow up and you take on your parents' God, right? You
Right.
take on God is for them and how their relationship with God is. And I could have already seen how like if I was at my church or my husband was at his church, if I don't know, let's say we decide that we're not gonna go to church that Sabbath morning, we're just
Right.
gonna stay and do home worship.
Everybody
His mom
call your
would
phone.
call me like, "Where you at? Like, why are you not at church?" My grandma and my parents have been calling me like, "I don't see you. Where are you?"
Yeah.
So moving to a new church, it allows us to make our own decisions and be able to do what's best for us instead of just, maintaining the status quo of what has always been done in the past. And we just get
Mhm.
to truly start from scratch and just, create our own story, which I think is a
Right.
huge benefit because
Mm.
it's I feel like it's gonna have a ripple effect for generations to come.
Right, right. I always used to say a lot of people think that when they get married, the bulk of their problems are gonna happen because it's you two going back and forth. But I'm always
Mhm.
like, 9 times out of 10, it's not that. It's outside stuff and how you deal with the outside stuff that tends to cause friction between you two. It's like
Mhm.
when you get married, if it was just y'all two, everything becomes easy. But then
Yeah.
his mom wants something, and your mom wants something, and then you want to feel like he respect your mom, and he wants to feel like you respect his mom, and then now they're creating stuff, and then now yeah, like, do you feel like
And you guys are thinking about the perception of like, okay, well,
right?
if I do this, this is how it's gonna look to this person. If I do this, you're gonna have a foothold here.
Mm.
Like it makes it difficult.
So it really could becomes that outside noise that really puts more pressure on your marriage than needed, right?
Yeah, definitely the outside noise. And for me, even like, I mean, my husband's not a big social media thing, but even for me, social media, like, granted, it's not like actively an outside noise, but there's always this pressure that I have to perform.
Hmm.
And recently, we made a decision where we're just like, we're gonna remove social media completely out
Yeah.
of it. Like,
Hmm.
I mean, obviously, we're still married, but we're like taking our marriage off of social media, so it's not
Mm.
so much of a huge focus, and we
Right.
don't feel like we have to make decisions because we have to like sort of like prove something to these other people that are not in our lives.
Right.
So yeah,
Right.
I've had to make because I realized how much, pressure it was causing. You always feel like you have an explanation to give. You always feel as though you have to, if you make a decision like there, you got to go back and explain it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's definitely like the outside noise that creates so much pressure. And once you
Right.
remove it, hope is that, everything falls into place.
Oh, trust me. I'll tell you, me who's a little further ahead, it definitely does. Like one
Yeah.
one of the things that I'm naturally just like I'm not worried about nobody's opinion but Jesus. So because I was
I love
naturally like that,
that.
yeah, my wife was more of like concerned about how family would take things and this and that. And I was like, hey, listen, they ain't paying your bills, they ain't taking care of you. I'm right here. It's just us. So whatever you gonna
Yeah.
do, if I ain't pressing you about it, don't worry about it. So like there's certain things that she's done. I don't know if I'm allowed to say it. Well, like okay, something simple as piercing her ears, right?
Yeah,
That
we're enjoying.
Right.
That
So
would be a huge thing.
so
Listen.
in front of her family, that would have been the biggest thing in the world. And I remember we used to talk about. I was like, listen, you already know where I stand when it comes to certain religious things because I've studied this and doctrine that, blah 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 blah. I said,
Mhm.
just read and make sure you feel right in your own heart. Like as your
Yeah.
husband, I support you. Like I know you're not gonna do nothing crazy or reckless. So just you study, you read. And I think over time, when she kind of seen how I was moving, as far as like I'm not worried about people on the outside, it kind of I don't want it's not you gave permission. It was just like, okay, it's working for him. It can work for me too. And then she kind of started to take that path. And like we've come to a place now where we've just been doing it so much that we really not bothered by anybody's opinion. To the point where
Yeah.
like my wife a little hood. Like she
Yeah.
you'd be very surprised the type of music she be trying to blast in the car. But
Yeah.
another side of that is like as a man, I kind of had to learn also too, like sometimes as men we can become possessive. And so becoming
Mhm.
possessive, you try to shape your wife in the way that you want her to be. And it's like,
That will
bro,
never work.
it never does.
Magic so quick.
Babe, wear this. Babe, do your hair like this. Babe, don't wear so much makeup. Man, listen, I had such a big thing with weave. I remember when we first got, I was like, babe, throw away the weave and all natural all the time. Like in my mind, that's how my family was going. That's how my wife was going to be. Never wear weave all that.
Yeah.
And then she would just look at me and then still do her thing. And I remember like we would get into it, and then I was like, yo, bro, just like chill, just let her do her thing. So there's certain things I just learned to learn, like fall back, let this person exist as they are. And I think it's like your perspective is so interesting because it's talking about how as a woman, you feel like you're giving up so much, which yes, ultimately does lead to your benefit. But I feel like on the other end, we as guys, we as husbands can make that transition easier by allowing you to still maximize in the
Mhm.
areas of your life that you want to keep,
Yeah.
but so it's like if you're giving up something, don't try to take. If you're shorty giving up, don't then you don't need to worry about taking from her because she's already given up. So it's like
Yeah.
in a situation where okay, we talking about the churches and wifey decides, all right, I'm gonna be with you, I'm gonna be by your side of everything, whatever. Well, if her thing is she likes to do her nails long or she likes to do
Yeah.
her hair, whatever, like give her that. Because if you start pulling so much, then she really starts to feel a loss of identity now. Because
Yes.
a year from now, you look back, and it always happens, and social media makes it 10 times worse. You look at your
Mhm.
memories and you look at things 3 years
Yeah.
ago, and I was like, yo, I was doing this and I was doing that. And then you look in the mirror and it's like, I'm not doing
I'm not
any
doing
of
that
that.
anymore.
And
Yeah.
as a guy, like I've learned, especially as a husband, it's like allow that person to transition to the wife that they see themselves being for you. Because if you
Yeah.
try to, you're gonna be this way and you're gonna be that way, it's just gonna create crazy resentment. And
Yeah.
I feel like, especially for guys, because we have like this ambitious, empire minded, this is how my
Yeah.
shorty gotta look and how she gotta talk. And when I go on stage, she gonna be like this. And it's like,
Yeah.
bro, you gotta understand you are you and she has to be her. She can't
Mhm.
be your version of her. She
Be her,
has to be
exactly.
her. And when you allow that to rock, everything else falls into place. That's
Yeah,
kind
and
of
you
been
do
my
realize
understanding.
that often when you love a woman through that period where it's like you're letting her do her, oftentimes like the result that you want, you'll get to it eventually. So what I was saying is oftentimes like the result that the man wants, he will get that if he just loves her through that period that she's in, that period of transition. And for me, it's something that we're still trying to figure out because again, like nobody wants you're already getting outside pressure. Like for me, I'm already getting outside pressure. Like my husband is an elder, and there's an idea of what an elder's wife's supposed to
Ooh.
look like. And there's like already this outside pressure. So you don't want that coming from the inside because that can literally crush you where you're
Right,
just
right,
I can't be who I am at home. I
right,
can't be who I am on the outside. So
right,
it
right.
creates that for you. But I think that truly, like what you said, like any married husband who's listening to this, like any married man listening to this, if you love your wife, just let her be her. Oftentimes the result that you do want in the end, you'll get
That's it. That's it. And you said it so perfectly. And
it.
she's giving y'all the cheat code. So my guys who's about think about marriage, engaged or married, if you want your wife to go in a certain way, back off and allow her to be her.
Yeah.
And I'll give you the other side to it. As a dude, whatever you want to see your wife exhibit it. So
Mhm.
if you want her to start working out more, work out consistently. It may take a couple months or some time, but she's gonna see you and she's gonna see the results that you're gonna get,
Who's
and
gonna join you?
she
Yeah.
gonna join you at some point. And to finish it perfectly, when she joins you, do not work out with her like a dude. Come on, you could do another one. Damn it. No, don't do that. You
Yeah.
gotta learn how to lead a woman. Hey, babe, you doing good. Hey, babe. Oh,
Yeah.
your butt look nice
You
when you do
know the
squat.
benefits that the man gets from that? I mean, we don't gotta get into all of that, but, there's you'll reap the benefits by
That's
doing
it.
it.
You just gotta play it right. I think with guys, if I had to say the most important thing when it comes to men, I would say the word patience. If you had to use one word on the female side, what would you use? The same word?
Hold on. So you're saying patience.
So yeah, if I would say for guys
I
when it
would
comes
say
to marriage,
I would say
patience.
grace.
It
I
was
would say
see? Ooh,
grace.
grace.
Grace. There's a lot of grace to be given. There's because sometimes, in spite of us saying, the guy shouldn't like pressure the woman to do something, like I think there's a benefit to being able to extend grace where you're just like, okay, you're doing this, I don't like it, but I understand why you're doing it, and I can extend some grace. And I realize that even in my friendships, the people that I love the most, it's like I have so much grace for them. Like
Right,
my friend
right.
Julie, who's also my maid of honor, I love her to death.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I can't see something that she would do to piss me off. And it's
Mm,
not because as a human, she can't do something to frustrate me. It's because I know that it's like I have built in to my heart so much grace for her that I don't
mm.
see how she could piss me off.
Right,
I don't see
right, right.
and I think like women, we tend to have that with our friends a little bit. They like to say on social media that women have more grace for their man and they don't give as much grace for their friends. For me, it's been the opposite. Like I feel like I have more grace for my friends and I don't have as much grace for my husband, which is something that I'm still working on. But I think that a lot of women need to learn just extend some grace
Right.
from time to time. Yeah.
No, I love that. I love that. Man, this has been fun. It has been amazing. I think there are so many nuggets in this episode. So I'm gonna ask you if you had to leave the people with one more phrase or one more word, what you giving us?
One more phrase in relation to this topic that we're
Or
discussing.
what? It don't even have to be a phrase. If it would be a paragraph, a
Listen,
10-minute monologue, whatever you
the
want.
phrase, I'll just
Lead it.
listen, like literally just be authentically you. Whether you are a husband, whether you're a wife, whether you're engaged, whether you're single, be authentically you. And once you're being authentically you, I feel like that's when you thrive in God's will because God doesn't ask you to be a different person. He can use you just as you are and create a masterpiece as a result. So just be you, be authentic, and thrive in his will
That's what's
simultaneously.
up. That's what's up. And before we go, how can the people connect with you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Mitsuka.Noel, on YouTube, just Mitsuka Noel, Facebook, Mitsuka Noel, all the
Mhm.
social media, just if you type in Mitsuka Noel, you'll find me.
All right, beautiful people. It's been another wonderful episode of Cell Speaks. Listen, we had the wonderful Mitsuka Attys Noël on dropping nuggets on marriage. Listen, even though she's about to be a year in the game, she still know her stuff. She's speaking with the wisdom of a 10-year vet. All right, so you guys who've already been in it, who think about it, this one is super helpful, super good. Share with your
For sure.
friends, like, subscribe to the YouTube, connect with us, ask us questions, whether it's me or whether it's her. You already know how to reach out. Listen, it's been fun. Peace out. Another episode of Cell Speaks. Love ya.